On the build show today, we've got a window replacement job for you. We're going to show you all the steps on how to pop out some old windows and put new ones in and make sure that they're both watertight and airtight. And we're going to show you a couple techniques, a couple tools, and some products that's going to make this way easier. Let's get going. Okay guys, here's the situation. 1970s house. You see it's one story. We've got a pretty good overhang here. And we're replacing these 1970s aluminum single pane with some brand new Marvin Integrity windows. Now the new windows are a flanged window, and I'm helping my friend John out at Timeless Construction. John called me and said, hey, we've got kind of a tricky situation on these windows. What's your suggestion in terms of waterproofing, flashing, and air sealing these windows? And here you can see better what we've got. Now John took the brick off already on this side. This is getting a bigger remodel, but this allows us to see what's going on with the sheathing. This is actually a fiberboard sheathing from the 60s, pretty common on 60s and 70s houses, where it's kind of a flaky fiberboard material where they just have an asphalt impregnated face on the outside. And then the windows were set on a 1x before. In the new install, we're actually going to push the windows back so they install right onto that fiberboard face. But here's the problem with this. It's really hard sometimes to integrate new flashing and new materials, new windows, when you're leaving the old, because this is not a total remodel. All the sheathing is going to stay. A typical peel and stick that you might put on here is just going to flop right off. There's no adhesive that's going to stick well to this. So let's go around to the side of the house, and I'm going to show you a technique that's going to make this install way easier. Okay, we're on the side of the house now, and John and his crew did a great job of prepping these openings. Now what we did was, first we actually removed the brick around the windows. Now that's best practice because we know then that we can get at the existing waterproofing and really integrate these new windows with the old to make sure we've got a really truly waterproof install that's also going to be airtight. Now here's where you can see the problem though. This house again has the fiberboard sheathing on the outside, and this is tricky. This would also be difficult if we had a standard tar paper out there, because when we integrate our peel and sticks or some of our traditional flashings, it's really hard to adhere to those old materials. And that's my first tip on today's video, is use a product like this. This is Proseco's Fast Flash. And let me show you how this really solves some problems for us. So here's the finished opening. You can see here we've got this red material. It kind of looks like a caulking material. And we've run it all the way into the rough opening, all the way to the back of the sheetrock basically, and also on the head all the way back in. And what this is this product originally was developed in Japan in the 1970s as a windshield adhesive. So it's both adhesive and it's waterproof. And this technology now on the job site solves a huge problem of bonding those materials that are old, that are dissimilar. This makes a big difference for us as a remodeler. Now let me show you how this works. Now you're used to traditional sausage tubes, or pardon me, traditional quart tubes that come with a plastic one you're going to drop into your gun. This is basically the same process, except you're going to use one of these right here. This is a sausage gun made to accept these tubes. You're going to drop that tube in, you're going to put your cone on and get it all prepped, and then it's going to gun out kind of like a thicker caulking, almost like a latex caulk, but a little thicker. Now this is not standard caulking though. This is a technology called STPE, and it's a moisture cure product, which means that it's going to pull moisture out of the air to actually cure. And again, because it's got adhesive products, this is really what separates it and makes it beautiful for a remodel situation. Because it's going to adhere perfectly to that fiberboard and to the wood, it's going to span all those gaps. We've made a beautiful and waterproof sill pan custom on this job, no matter what the opening was, and it's going to stick to just about any material on the job site. It's going to stick to concrete. It's going to stick to OSB or plywood that we might encounter. It's going to stick to the 2x4s there, and it's going to stick to those tar papers. Now, if you've got a material that's not common though, you might want to do an adhesion test. Basically, you're going to gun a bead of this out, let it sit overnight to make sure it cures, and then try and peel it off. If it peels off and destroys the material as you peel it off, that means that it's sticking well. If you're able to peel it off in one nice pretty glob, and it's not sticking, then you know it's not going to work. But I've found it works on these remodels in just about anything that I've encountered. Okay, now let me show you how to use it. What we're going to do is basically gun out a couple of rows, kind of like we've got corn rows on there, on that 2x4 sill. We're also going to run a fat bead right here on this top of this fiberboard, and then we're going to use this right here. This is basically just a spreader spatula, and we're going to smooth it out. Now don't worry too much about thickness. It really only needs to be about 20 mils thick. It doesn't need to be super thick. But depending on your situation, you might want to vary that thickness a little bit. For instance, in this case, I want a little bit thicker because we've got that fiberboard, and I wanted to make sure that I've got everything adhering well, and it's going to lock that fiberboard in and make sure it's not coming apart on me. You also want to be really cautious about your seams. So for instance, here we've got the 2x4 sill and the 2x4 jamb coming together. We want to run a nice bead into that corner. That's always where the waterproofing issues are. So let's really make sure we get it in that corner. And then as I mentioned before, we're also going to run that all the way back to the back of the sheetrock, and we're going to do it on the head. Now in this particular case, we've got a double 2x header on here, and we actually had a gap in there that we had to shove some backer rod on. And then Prosco makes a family of products in this R-Guard family, and one of their other products is called Joint and Seam Filler. This is meant to be filling those larger gaps, and that's a pink product that actually has some fibers in it. So you can see we ran that on that head after we put that backer rod in. We're going to let that dry, and then we're going to put another layer of fast flash over that. So the entire rough opening is fast flashed, and we're going to bring that fast flash down onto the fiberboard by a couple inches, 2 to 3 inches, to make sure it's going to overlap our window flange. Now when it's all said and done, all we need to do is either let it cure overnight and come back to set the windows the next day, or in our case, we actually want to start setting windows this afternoon, so I'm going to speed up the cure process by putting some mist on here. We're actually going to mist it with a little bit of water. That's one of the beauties of this product, especially in a remodel situation, is we're not super worried about the weather. Even if it rained this morning, all we're going to do is wipe off the puddles and then we're good to go. And because this product also is permeable, meaning moisture can dry through it, any moisture that's on that 2x4 or gets on there is going to be able to dry through the product. Very, very cool. Okay, so our rough openings are set. It's time to install these windows. Let's wait till these are totally dry and not tack-free, and then we'll come back and show you how to set the windows. Okay guys, we're back, and John and his crew did a textbook install over here. Now we started with that rough opening fully prepped. We've got the Prosco Fast Flash all the way into the jamb and then all the way on the outside. And then when they're setting that window, they're going to use the same method that we like to use when I set them on my jobs, which is to use a laser to make sure that that window is perfectly level all the way across. We're going to set that laser up in the corner of the room, and then we're going to be able to do all the windows in that room with that single laser install. You're also going to want to use a level on your jambs as well to make sure that you're perfectly plumb on those windows. And then once you nail them off, this is again where you're going to see the beauty of this fluid applied. You know, on these particular windows, this is a Marvin Integrity window, fiberglass window, but it's got a nailing flange on the outside that's made from vinyl. And the nailing flange actually sits into a kerf cut on the side of the window. And what you've got there is one point that I really think that the fluid applied makes a big difference on. Now they make a nailing thin corner gasket, and John's guys did a good job installing those. You want to make sure that those actually make it on the window. Don't throw those in the trash. And that's basically an L-shaped piece that's going to cover over that corner because the nailing flange is not continuous. There's a cut out there. And again, we're going to put a bead of that fluid applied all the way down the jamb of the window. And I actually like to cover over where that vinyl flange is actually curved into the window, so that's nice and watertight. And that fluid applied, boy, does it does a nice job going over top of that corner piece, protecting all that, sealing up everything beautifully on this window. And in effect, we've eliminated all those typical peel and sticks that you see in the job site. The entire install from the base waterproofing to the final steps, all done with that same Prosco product. And then the final step, you're not going to use it on this particular house. You notice here we're one story, and on this gable end here we actually have a pretty big overhang of the siding above us. But if we were working on a two-story house, if we had more exposure, we'd want to make sure we had a really good head flashing on there. Stay tuned for a future video where I'll talk a little bit more about these. But basically this is a piece of metal flashing that's going to go on the head of the window. Now I don't even have room to demo it on this window because it's super tight. at the heads, but basically you would install the window as you see it here. You'd run a bead on the back of this flashing, and then I like to wet set them, where you actually set it into a bead of the Proseco Fast Flash, and then once you nail it off, put another bead over top of that. And now this window install is going to be both air and watertight for the life of the building. This is a great install by John and his crew. Okay, so now the window is water and airtight on the outside. The last step that we need to take is on the inside. We need to seal the window around the four corners. Now, the usual method that you see on job sites is typically low expansion foam, a can of foam with a straw that you spray in there. That's not my favorite install, and in fact, Proseco has a great product and a process for this that I really like. What we're going to be using is their air dam product. Also comes in a sausage pack. What we're going to do is we're going to slide our backer rod in, and as you can see on these windows, we've got various widths of gap here. So you want to keep backer rods in several different sizes. Slide that backer rod in, and then you're actually going to caulk that gap with air dam. What that's going to do is the air dam is going to bridge on the inside where you've got that red fast flash already, and then it's also going to touch the inside of the window jamb. So now if this window ever were to leak, we would leak inside that cavity. It would run down and it would be hitting fast flash the whole time. It wouldn't touch any wood. It would get to our sill, and then it would have a way out, because you can see his guys did a good job of using horseshoe shims, and we've got a pathway for that water out. But if air backs up in here, now we've got all four sides on the back of the window caulked with that air dam product. Now, spray foam, we've used it for years as builders. The problem is it's not continuous. You get a very discontinuous install, which means that you're going to have gaps, and it's not always going to be totally waterproof. It might actually soak up some moisture and hold some moisture in that cavity. But in this case, because we've run that fast flash all the way back in on the jambs on all four sides, and then we've tightened it up that very last step with air dam, this is just a beautiful install. Huge thanks to John and his crew for having us on their job site, letting us invade here for a couple of hours. Also, big thanks to Proseco. These guys have sponsored my videos now for 2 years. Fantastic company with great products. They've also got a great network of reps. We actually had the Dallas guy come down to help us with this video. So be sure to look for them. There'll be a link in the description below that you can get to those guys, and you can find out where your local rep is and where you can buy their products locally. But as you can see, huge help for a remodeler on a job site to be able to use a fluid applied product. Hopefully you learned something today. Hit that subscribe button if you're not a current subscriber to The Build Show. We publish every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We'll see you next time on The Build Show.